Welcome to another episode of the Creative Endeavour podcast. Now today I'm just getting out of the studio. Been painting for a few hours already this morning, and sometimes it's nice to just hit that reset button, get a bit of inspiration out here in the forest. Nothing like it. But you know, when I'm painting in the studio, I like to feed my mind and get inspired, so I'm listening to podcasts, and to be honest, that's my inspiration for creating this podcast and bringing it to you. Hopefully you can listen to this while you're painting or sculpting or doing your creative thing in your own space. And so here I'm trying to bring inspiring stories from creative professionals from around the world. And today I've got a great guest, Kelly Foss, who's a young artist based in New York City. Classically trained, she does some exquisite work. Now, Kelly's beautiful paintings primarily depict the human form. She makes it as an artist full-time, but supplements her income by teaching with a group called Drawing New York. I had a really fantastic conversation with Kelly. She was really open, which I appreciated, and she shared with me some of her strategies for how she makes it as an artist. Now, I record these conversations using Skype, so please allow for some audio glitches along the way. Again, she's coming to us from New York City, so you're gonna hear all sorts of New York noises in the background. But that's kind of cool. I really hope you enjoyed this episode of The Creative Endeavour. Without further ado, here's Kelly Foss. Kelly, welcome to the podcast. It's great to be with you. Nice to meet you. I've been checking out your Instagram feed. Some fantastic work on there. Why don't we kick things off by having you tell us a bit about yourself, where you started, and what has led you up to this part in your artistic journey?
Oh, goodness. My mom's an artist, so I grew up with art around the home. I wasn't thinking of it as like a career or anything, just being a little kid and you're dragged along to the art council meetings or art shows, and the art supplies around the house weren't just average crayons, it was like oil pastels and legit sketchbooks. And so just from an early age, I was already in the art world. So it feels like it's just been a part of me forever. So when people ask me when I began art, I'm like, I don't know how to answer that. My mom will tell you that at 6 months old, I drew a goat's head.
Wow.
But that's, a mom. I don't know if that's trustworthy, but she swears that I was drawing from before I could talk.
Fantastic. So you're a full-time artist now?
Yes, but I live in New York City, so you always pick up whatever sort of side gigs you can do at the same time. But yeah, my full-time gig is art.
Fantastic. So how does that work for you? Like, do you show in galleries? Give us a breakdown of what your career looks like and how you make it as an artist.
I show, right now I have a gallery that I show at in Texas, because I used to live there. Then I haven't gotten to this point of courting different galleries to have a continually showing basis with them. So right now it's more of I enter different art shows, open calls, show at those special shows, and there's always a beginning and an end time. And then I have people contacting me online who want to either purchase something that I post that's online on my website, Instagram, Facebook, or they just want to commission me to paint somebody in their family or paint themselves.
Fantastic. So you've put yourself out there, like, personally through this social media, and you're starting to already attract that business in. I mean, that's fantastic. I mean, the quality of your work says a lot, so it's no wonder that you're getting that kind of, traction already. I still have not been able to do that with my social media. A few pieces here and there, but it's mainly for, like, how to paint stuff. It's always so interesting.
I get a lot of that. I get a lot of people asking how.
So do you teach as well? Is that a way that you kind of are able to supplement things, make things work?
Yes, that I mean, full-time art is my deal, but my second love is teaching. So I teach with a group called Drawing New York. And so I do portrait workshops every few months. And I was reading about how you love teaching, and I was like, okay, I get that. I totally get what you're saying of waiting for that aha moment where something you said clicks and you can see how their art just shifts. And I'm like, yeah, I feel that.
Yeah, I must admit that is a really nice moment. I mean, because tell me if you heard this. I got this. It drove me nuts early on. Particularly, it was kind of confusing because when I studied art, through a tertiary institution, a university, and it's almost like they did everything they could to drive the creativity and the business side of you out, and you were set up almost to fail as soon as you walked out of that place. And I remember hearing that real artists don't have to teach. I said, well, what are you guys doing here? At university teaching us? It didn't make any sense. But I had that thing. No, that's one of those moments is like, if only I had said that then. I never actually had the gumption to say it, and I probably didn't even think about it at that time. But
they can't handle the truth.
Pretty much. But the thing is I had that idea in the back of my head is that a serious artist, shouldn't be teaching. They should just be working on their art, and it's going to make it, man. I mean, that's where it's at. But there's something about that light bulb moment. I mean, I was thrown into teaching by necessity, but then once I got in front of that group of people, I was like, I love this. Like, this is my element. So, tell us a bit about your relationship with teaching. I mean, because that kind of, you're reflecting a little bit of that here as well. Like, what kind of classes do you run? What's that environment like? What kind of workshops do you like to teach? Let's talk more about that.
You know those books where it's like math for dummies or something? I feel like I am that for art.
Oh, wow.
Because I feel like, especially in whatever you want to call or label it is that we do, is it classical realism or just representational art or figurative, just realism, it feels to me like it's a very exclusive world. Like it's a very elite sports club that unless you have enough money, unless you speak the correct jargon, you're not allowed in. And that means if this is the way for you to express something about yourself or tell a story, you're just not allowed to, because you don't have what it takes. And also there's this false idea of you are either talented and you got it from the start without any effort, or you just don't have it. You can't express yourself. And I wanted to fight both of those in the way that I teach and with who I teach with, because it's very open to the community, and I like that anyone can have access to it. It's not going to break the bank, the classes, and just being able to break down teaching into easy steps, making it accessible. And there's a book called Talent is Overrated. And have you heard of that one?
I'm looking it up right now. I love that title. That's why I nod, because it's a philosophy I subscribe to. So talent is overrated. I'm going to check out that book.
Yeah, it's so good, because in this art world of realism, it's like, oh, you just have it or you just don't. And that book, and just, we think about this sort of stuff all the time, of just fighting that thought in your head when drawing isn't going well or painting isn't going well, not condemning yourself of like, oh, I'm not talented. It's just not knowing the steps to take. And there's very natural steps that you can take. And it is a system. It doesn't make it not creative at that point or heartless. It just, I think it can be opened up to everybody, that they can be creative and express themselves.
I think that's really wonderful. I mean, I totally get that, and I have felt that within particular circles, and again, particularly within the university circle, that this was something you either, believed in, if you're not part of this clique or toe this line in terms of an ideology, then you're not serious, and you shouldn't be taken seriously. I mean, and I felt that trying to be a landscape painter going through a modern art school. It was difficult. But you know, when you're in a position to then turn around and teach, you know, it puts you back in this space where you realize that everybody somewhere has got that desire within them, and if you can be that person to just kind of help somebody along and facilitate that growth and that development, it's fantastic. The thing that I have difficulty with, though, with the whole teaching world, just on a personal level, is what it does to young people. The vast majority of my students, whenever I was teaching live workshops, were retirement age. You know, and I didn't have very many young people come through. I had a handful here and there, but it was certainly the vast majority retirement age. So now that they've lived their life and done their work and done their job, now they have permission to do what they want to do. And there's something about that I find kind of sad, because a lot of them said, you know, oh, I wish I could have done this when I was younger. I wish I could have, you know, I wish I should have just took a leap of faith and just launched my career when I was 21, but it didn't happen. But now they've got a few years left, and so they're going to pick up a paintbrush and go for it. And there's something about that I mean, first I admire their strength and their courage to just kind of go for it at that age. But I think what we do to young people is kind of sad. Do you get many young folks coming through your classes?
You know, I've had a range so far. I would say that probably young 20s all the way till, I don't know, maybe later 70s.
Right.
There's quite a range, and that's why I like the group that I teach with, Drawing New York, just because it's not intimidating in the sense of I'll talk to older people, and sometimes they don't want to take an art class because they're like, no one wants to teach me because, you know, I'm older and I'm not going to have a career. And it's like, no, you have a voice just as much as everybody else, and some awesome artists really did start later in life. And how beautiful is that they get to come to a place of creating where perhaps they don't have that stress of, can I twist this to make it something that I'll survive off of? Perhaps they don't have that need to survive off of sales of art. And that's a beautiful place to be in. That's a nice thing. So it's like, you know,
that's
come to it as you are.
It's almost true freedom in a way, isn't it? Not having the pressure of the sale and just going, hey, what's in me? Let's get that out. Yeah. So I mean, you said so much earlier that I'd love to unpack. I'd just like to back up just for a minute, though. You show with this gallery in Texas. Do you feel comfortable revealing who that is?
Oh, yes. Also, because I used to live in Texas. Yeah. So when I talk about like the business world, I get all my business information and knowledge from this gallery. Because when I moved to Texas, I was just like doing art, and I was showing at this art gallery, and it's called the Hal Marcus Gallery. And I was just showing there, and I think I was picking up a piece that didn't sell in a show, and they were like, oh, we could use some kind of part-time help, just a small thing. It'll probably last a month. 8 years later, I'm managing the gallery. I had many years of like professional business coach coming in for like weekly meetings with us. It was just like such a wonderful, priceless art business education. And my boss there was and is a working artist, career artist. And a lot of artists, I think you'll probably agree, there's either a creative side or a business side, and they usually don't have the same brain. They just can't figure that out. Yeah. He has that both. So it's like he's super creative, but he also has great business sense and great business ethics. So that gallery, I managed it, and just so grateful for that in my past. So now when I'm coming through dealing with my customers or my clients, I can uphold that standard of like I want them to have a great experience. I don't want them to ever feel like I'm the one benefiting from the sale and they're just like, oh, well, we get a painting.
That's so interesting. We do generally as artists have a huge problem, a huge issue with charging for work, taking money for work. Our whole relationship with money, I think, is completely screwed up and backwards for the most part. I mean, there are some artists out there that are awesome with this. But again, I started off with the idea that I shouldn't be wealthy. I shouldn't try and make money, and I shouldn't create a sale. It only ends up crippling you. What would you say were some of the things that you learned from this business coaching that really helped you? Some of the top things that stick in your mind in terms of practices and philosophies that you still carry with you to this day?
Well, that the starving artist myth, or kind of like how we make it such this honorable thing of like, if you're a starving artist, you're a real artist. That's just, it's false. It just means that you aren't into business and you don't have knowledge of how to treat customers, and that it shouldn't be that way. It doesn't make you less creative if you want to make this as your living. Pleasing customers doesn't mean that you have to not please yourself in your art. It doesn't mean that you're compromising. What else? There's just so much, but it really comes down to make customer happy, make yourself happy. It can happen on the same time. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
What would you say would be your way of satisfying a customer, making them happy, and consequently turning them into a repeat customer?
Well, one thing is if someone comes to you with a commission and you really don't like that idea of what they're proposing, propose something opposite that you would be interested in. Say, that's a really cool vision, but this is more of my thing. And like, can we direct it that way? And if you can't direct it that way, say, can I recommend you to another artist? And I think most of us have just tons of artists that we know, all different styles. So if a customer's not jiving with my style, I can recommend them to somebody. And that is me losing a customer, but that's me being able to support some other artist with that customer. And that's not me losing business. That's just good business where hopefully there's a seamless, like, that customer is going to be taken care of. This artist is going to be taken care of. And maybe in the future, if they have a client that they can't serve, they can send them to me, but not counting on it of like, hey, I gave you a customer and give me one back.
Yeah.
But I think the hierarchy needs to be like, make sure the customer is going to be happy. And then it's also just with good business practices of under promise, over deliver.
Yeah.
Of if you tell them that you're going to be done with a project or they get to see progress photos by a certain date, have it ready 3 days prior. Like, don't toe up to that deadline.
Under promise and over deliver?
Under promise and over deliver. So say like, okay, client, I'm going to have that painting ready for you in 2 months. And in a month and a week, say, hey, I'm ahead of schedule, have it ready. What do you think?
Yeah.
And it just always be giving extra value as much as you can. I think some of us work really well under that last minute deadline.
Yeah.
And I guess I work okay with the last minute deadline, but I way rather, just for my sanity, to know I am going to get this ready and done and complete. And and I'm allowing myself that cushion to be human of worst case scenario, if something comes up or maybe people come into town and I just So it's not about like under promising and over delivering. It's not about like misleading or lying to the customer. It's about allowing myself a bubble to be human, have life, allow myself to maybe have a bad week. Because you can't always schedule creativity of when I say creativity, like, you know, sometimes a painting, your best plan on it, you're just like, why is this color looking so off? And sometimes it just like, it takes a little bit of time to land on something that you're satisfied with. So I allow this bubble of just like,
that's smart.
Hopefully I'm not going to be like an all-nighter thing, because all-nighters, like 3 nights in a row, not so cool.
Not great. You start tripping out pretty bad after 3 nights in a row.
Exactly.
I wonder why
and then you're like,
are,
I need to burn this painting.
I sometimes wonder why drugs are so popular. Just go without sleep for a while. You're going to be tripping out. And personally, what I find is that when I set something that is rigorous and really ambitious, I end up having to grow, adapt, and change to fill that space, and it pulls me out of myself to become something bigger. It's just a personal thing that I've heard some speakers. I tell you who I'm really loving at the moment, and who talks about this a lot, is Grant Cardone. And I found out about him through Gary Vaynerchuk, and I downloaded everything that guy had. And I'm like, I like what this guy has to say. He's an interesting cat. He's a really good dude.
These guys they're not doing lightweight stuff.
Nope.
They are like full throttle.
Absolutely. Well, that's cool. So it sounds to me like you are one of these people that is able to balance, both this amazing artwork. And guys, please check out Kelly's work. I'm going to throw up her Instagram. Where can people find you on Instagram? Just while I've got that in my mind. It's
one word, Kelly Foss Art. Foss like boss, but with an F.
Foss like a boss. Foss like a boss, guys. Kelly Foss Art. You're going to find some amazing portraits, amazing paintings. The drawings are exquisite. Your skill with pencil and charcoal is just out of this world. And, it's really, I mean that. Like, I'm really blown away by your work. I could learn a thing or two from you. Like, really.
Oh, thank you.
Fantastic.
Well, I need to get over to New Zealand and get some landscape lessons from you. Oh my gosh, that one that you just completed.
Yeah. Oh.
Now, do people ever ask you like how many hours goes into that?
All the
because
time.
that is the hardest thing.
All the time.
That is the hardest thing to answer.
Yeah, so, hours for me, I mean, and maybe we could talk about this a little bit, because the other thing that I do get asked quite a lot, and something I'd like to pass on to you, is your schedule. And what does it take to create a piece of work, one, and then how many hours each day are you dedicating to that? But with the landscape that you're referring to, it's kind of like a winter morning, frosty scene, big pine tree. It's weird, because I've been working with that idea for so long. It was the result of 3 on plein air paintings. So 3 times out in the field, like getting this thing in different lights and at different times of day, different seasons as well, is completely different. And then what ended up happening is I found it on this one cold, frosty morning. Before, I chucked this up on YouTube as well. I did some big on plein airs. It didn't really work, but it was a lot of fun. It loosened me up. It got me in the zone. And I wasn't trying to turn out a good painting. I was just trying to have some fun with it. But then I did this little 8x10. I was really happy with that. I felt it was really slick. It had the colors, everything in the right place. So I ended up doing it from that bigger one. So if we're counting those on plein air sessions, that would probably be about 6 to 8 hours there, but then in the studio, about 150 to 200 hours in the studio working on the big one. And it's a 36 inch by 54 inch, so it's reasonably big. But the thing that I like to do is I like to layer. I mean, and that was, I've been playing with a lot of different styles, a lot of different techniques, because I'm interested in artists from the past, breaking down how they did it, what were the materials they used, what were the palettes that they were using. But for me, when I'm in my own natural zone, I love to layer, and I love to go for this, what people will call tight or slick detail. Let me tell you, it's anything but detailed. It is layered, but it's not really detailed. Detail's an illusion.
It looks so detailed.
Yeah, it's actually, there are several tricks that I'm applying to give it that feeling, because I want you to look at it from 10 feet. It drives me nuts when people get right up on the painting. They're like, wow, look at the brush. I can't, it's because normally the comment is like, there's nothing there, which is
So
kind
if
of
you're
cool.
wanting them to view it from such a distance, now are you doing the, this is like tech talk now.
Yeah.
Are you holding the brush like a pen, or are you holding it like, it's called a cigar hold, but I don't understand because you don't hold a cigar like that, but
Cigar hold.
you know, where it allows you to extend fully your arm.
I'm normally an under the brush kind of guy like this, at the end or the back third of the handle, somewhere between halfway and the back third. That's where I am. But I will, in blocking it especially, you'll see me hold the end of the handle like this, like a sword,
Okay.
and I'll be
Yeah.
full arm extended, drawing with my shoulder. So,
Okay, yeah.
and that's the way I like to teach as well. I mean, what I say to people is, when you write up on a canvas, this actually is not very much control. You've got to stabilize everything in order to get a mark like that. Try standing without any bracing and do this on a canvas. And here, if you're listening to this, I'm just wiggling my fingers. I'm trying to isolate my elbow and my shoulder. It doesn't really work. You tighten up, you end up shaking all over the place. That's when a maul stick can help, or something to brace your elbow. So I got a chair, a dental assistant chair, that braces my elbow. I'll use a maul stick if I'm doing this little bitty stuff. But if I'm doing little bitty stuff, I'm normally just kidding myself. But what I like to do is kind of hold that brush from the end, work with my shoulder, lock out my arm, and kind of do general broad sweeping motions when I'm blocking in. And after a while, like I'm at the point now where I'm not really thinking about it. This is why I listen to audiobooks and programs and things while I'm painting, because I'm not consciously involved. So it's just happening. Normally I have to have people go, "Hey, what are you doing right now?" I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. Oh, this color, that color, and this brush. Here we go." You know, I don't really know. It's just happening.
Don't you find it that is what can make teaching mentally exhausting? Because you have to suddenly intellectualize what you are doing and verbalize it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rather than being on this wonderful like cruise control where you're like, I just spent an hour with Gary Vaynerchuk and oh, look it, and this is painted.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that in a second. I want to back up because I want to make sure we don't miss that question. So you're asking me that's how long that took on my on that painting, but where I want to pivot from there is kind of talk a little bit about your schedule, and I'll share with you some of the crazy stuff I'm doing with mine, and maybe people will be interested in that too. But what does your routine look like? I mean, maybe we can start off as well. Like, typically, you probably get asked this: how long does it take you to make a painting?
Yeah, so it depends on the size of the painting and the difficulty level. For a long time, like especially on my Instagram, where you'll see my still life paintings, just little subjects, and it's usually just a singular subject. Normally with still life paintings, I like to do a one and done, where I sit down, maybe it's 4 hours, and a simple subject, and it's a small painting, maybe it's like, I don't know, 8x8 or something, and just one session, done. So those are kind of like my faster works, and I really enjoy that because there's a freshness to it. And if I'm doing portraiture or figurative art, I like to work from life. And if I can get a model for a month, I will take a model for a month. If I have a friend sit for me for 3 hours, then I've got to make it work. So my approach is different depending on what supplies I have, how much time I have. So each piece is a new venture. I'm not ever that consistent.
Yeah, no, and same with me. I mean, I get asked that all the time. It's like, hey, how long does it take? I was like, well, what are we talking about here? A seascape, a portrait, a landscape, and how big? I've got one that I'm doing now that's 2.5 meters long. That's taken me months so far. So,
wow.
But it all depends, right? And so the other one is what is your, talk to us a little bit about your routine and what that looks like, and how many hours a day are you spending on your art, and how many hours a week, what's it look like? How do you make this work?
When you become just a career artist, you are an entrepreneur. It is a small business that you're running, and that means you're the boss and you make the hours. So for about 4 years there, I was in big shared studio space, shared models. And so my morning started at 8:30, and I'd have 4 hours with a model in the morning, 4 hours with a model in the afternoon, and then my day would end cleaning up my palette at like 5:30. So it'd be about 8-hour days of in the studio. And then sometimes I would just do a one and done still life painting after that. So life was maybe about 8 to 10 hour paintings Monday through Friday. And now that I am out of that group big studio and I work out of a studio in my apartment, I set the schedule of, we have these ideals of waking up super early and knocking out a painting. But I've realized my brain really likes it to wake up moderately early, have a cup of coffee, listen to something, and look over the pieces that I have not completed and kind of noodle around on those paintings. And I am a big food person, so I'm going to take some breaks and eat. Mm-hmm. And also I love working from natural light. So sometimes the day dictates what I'm doing. Because if I'm working on a still life and the natural light is casting a beautiful shadow, and then suddenly it's an extremely overcast day and it's just so ambient, everything is lost and the colors are kind of blown out, then my plan will change to be like, oh, okay, actually I'm going to be working on a grisaille or a black and white drawing or something. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I try to work in creating, especially in the earlier part of the day. Mm-hmm. And if I can get over and do something of business world, of replying to my emails, and I have to find even a better balance nowadays of making sure that I'm spinning those plates on that side and doing my painting and my creativity on my other side. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of different things we have to balance out, a lot of things that we take into account. I mean, many people don't realize that aren't involved in art, but even people starting out in their art career don't realize how many different hats we're going to have to wear in this journey. And, whilst it might be nice for some and we can delegate everything that isn't painting, I have not found a way to do it for my own career yet. And I find myself working, consistently 6 days a week, at least 14-hour days, at least,
Yeah.
But I mean, again, for anybody listening to that going, wow, man, you're crazy. I'm obsessed. And I can see by the quality of your work as well that you're obsessed too, even though you're kind of thinking that's work time. I mean, I talked to Cesar Santos, and Cesar said, I asked him, how many days a week do you work? He's like 7. Work every day. He said, because I'm always thinking, man. I'm always thinking about these things, and I'm always conceptualizing something. Even if I go away on a trip, I'm looking at. I'll find a person. I'll see a shadow. I'm working. I'm constantly soaking it up, and I love that. I love that about him. I think he's got a great attitude towards it. For me, I mean, I'm trying to work, and I end up actually working 7 days as well. It's just with where I am now, one of those days is taken up, for the most part with stuff I have to do around here because we have a little bit of property, and I got to take care of a few things, and also the nearest town is about an hour away where we get our groceries.
Do you have sheep?
No, I don't. I have some neighbors that are sheep.
I was about to say, is that a good New Zealand stereotype? You have sheep?
It's a highly offensive New Zealand stereotype.
I was going to bring a Kiwi with me, but then I was like,
aw, that would have been great. No, look, there are a bunch of sheep in New Zealand, absolutely, and there's a lot of sheep around where I am, and they make beautiful subjects for paintings. They're great.
Gorgeous.
So there's a big wool industry here, but I'm trying to dedicate as much as I can to this thing. And I think, would you agree? I mean, you have to put in pretty much everything you can. You've got a particular way of working where your parameters are set creatively by what the daylight hours are doing. I mean, if I had to do that, I think it'd be a lot harder for me. So the fact that you've kind of put this limitation, yes, but a creative, it's a creative avenue, and so it's a good thing. It's a good limitation, I can see, because it shows, you know, you're still dedicated to this thing. You're still involved in this thing. I mean, how many people do you come across where they hear that you're an artist and they fantasize about what that must be like, and they're like, wow, must be nice for some.
I think it's just a thought that people have of just like, oh, you just don't want to work. And it's like, oh, wow, you have no idea how much work goes into this. The art business, there's another false idea of just make awesome art and put it on the wall and buyers will come. Like, if you build it, they will come.
Oh, worst
There's so much
philosophy
hustle.
ever.
I know, but that's the idea. And then if the buyers don't come and magically magnetized to this hidden room with paintings, then it just shows that society doesn't appreciate true art. And you are one of the true artists because you're starving.
Wow.
Like, no, you just gotta hustle. And it takes, like you're saying, you are always working. And it's ideal that you're working in front of your easel, but often it's in front of your computer screen, talking with your clients or potential clients, or one of my favorite things of doing is just while I'm leaving a painting in a state of I'll be back to you at some point, taking a photo, and you always have your cell phone with you, just looking at that photo of my painting, and it can get on my nerves of being like, oh, that's what I'm not digging about it.
Yeah.
So already in my brain, I'm working on the painting of what my next steps are, what's my next layer, am I going to glaze that to correct that? So ideally, it'd be great to do some work directly at the easel, but there's so much work to be done outside of it, just even mentally.
Yeah, no, that's so true. I call that cook time, where I'll put something away for a while and try and think about the solution. I mean, or even hang it up on the wall. Taking a photo is a great way. There's something about taking a photo on your cell phone and looking at the image on your cell phone because it reduces the painting. The painting might be 1.5 meters across, and now you've reduced it to this little tiny screen, and suddenly you're viewing it from a distance because you can't get any closer to it. And now suddenly everything becomes apparent. The blaring mistakes in your composition or the color balance or something's off, and you can say, hey, this is exactly what's happened. I love that. I think that's a great idea. But look, you mentioned something there that I really feel like it needs to be addressed. You could do the best work and keep it in the closet or keep it, it just hanging in the room. And yeah, paint it, build it, and they will come. Not going to happen. So how do you market yourself? How do you kind of, put the word out there and say, hey, I'm Kelly Foss. I'm the boss of art. Come and buy my stuff. How do you do this?
One, I would block me if I heard me say that.
I think it's great. I think you should start
I was
saying
like,
that
thumbs
immediately.
down.
Oh, come on.
Oh my gosh. I think we have too much of that in the art world. It's like, or maybe it's healthy. I don't know. Not me. Well, right now, I think in business for artists, if you want to become a career artist and have this as what you do, we are in the best time because of the internet, and there are so many ways to market yourself nowadays, and especially with Instagram or Facebook. So I tell people that there are 2 ways to go about this, and I would love to hear if you agree.
Sure.
There is being consistent, having a schedule, just consistently putting stuff out, or there is shock and awe. It's not as consistent, but when you post something, it is wow.
Wow.
So there's 2 ways of going about it.
I really love a philosophy of consistent shock and awe. I think that's great. Can we combine the two? How cool would that be?
I would love that, but I mean, I think that lends it to like your personality, where you're just like, I'm gonna run and see how fast I can go and keep on going, and people are like, hey, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And you're like, it's okay, I got this.
I sprint my marathons, man. I mean, come on.
Oh, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do a little jogging and
Yeah.
be easing on my joints. And
Oh, wow.
like,
Wow.
I'm gonna enjoy the birds that I see that I'm walking by.
We should,
That's my philosophy.
at some stage when I'm in New York City, I'd love to
Yeah.
just come and spend a bit of time. Rachel and I will come spend a bit of time in your studio, because maybe I could use a little bit of that chilled out vibe that you have happening here. That slow and steady marathon approach. I can feel that. A little bit about your personality just in the time we've been getting to know each other. And then
I want to say that's my personality, but I think I'm more like a duck, where you're like, oh, it's all serene on top of the water, but under the water, it's just like paddling
cool.
like crazy.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's cool. Okay. Well, but you're right. I mean, this is an amazing time, and it's a time for optimism. It's a time for positivity, I think. And I just want to throw out something there as well on a personal note. And probably not many people will know this about me. My close friends will. I spent, during the United States election that happened recently, I spent a solid 2 years glued to the news. And what that did to me, what that did to my personality, is it just took me from a level 11 out of 10 all the way to a 5 or a 6. It dulled me right down. I got pessimistic. I got scared. I was worried about the end of the world. I was worried about the economy. I was worried about all this stuff, and not focused on my business and not focused on my art. It took a dive, and you'd be going, well, hang on, this was during the time you actually also launched your YouTube channel. Yeah, but how awesome would it have been if I really showed up? So my personal philosophy is, get away from news, get away from media, anything that brings down your energy, anything that takes a negative toll on your psychology. And start to realize that you're right. We do live in an amazing time to be an artist. There's never been a time like this. We have this thing called the internet. I never would have known about you. You wouldn't have known about me. I couldn't have messaged you and gotten in touch and say, hey, Kelly, let's do a podcast. What's a podcast? This is an amazing time for us to get out there, share our work, spread ideas, develop and grow, and really explore this thing. And to make money, to monetize this, which I feel if you're an artist and you want to have a full-time go at doing this and be a career artist, you got to learn how to monetize it. And you got to 10x that. You got to really work out how to monetize this thing out the wazoo. Because, my first goal, and let me know if this rings true for you. My first goal when I started, painting and becoming an artist was, I just wanted to sustain creative production. If I could sustain my creative production, I was all good. But then after a while, once I did that, it wasn't enough of a goal. I had to kind of up the goal a little bit. I thought, well, this is cool. I'm just making it. I don't have to get a job. I'm able to pay the rent and the groceries, but I got no savings. I don't have money to take that trip I really want to take to go and get more reference. So then I had to kind of set higher goals and demand a little bit more on myself. When the internet kind of really took off and social media kind of took off, I was like in the height of my career. I didn't take advantage of that. I'm not even taking advantage of it now properly. I'm trying to just kind of break into that, learning about this, going, wow, it's just dawned on me recently how amazing this time is and how amazing the opportunity is.
Well, what you do that I appreciate is that you are generous with what you're knowing and you are giving it away. And I feel like, especially in, I guess, any entrepreneur, but in the art world, when there is the starving artist thing going on, you start being selfish. Mm-hmm. So you start hoarding your information, you hoard the ideas of knowing about competitions and like, don't tell anybody, or art galleries needing new artists. It's like, oh, quick, like keep it to yourself, hide all the value, like hoard. And you are doing videos, you're doing content, you're on your website, and it's like, this is so good and so healthy, because in you just flowing out this information and being generous, you're helping a whole new generation of artists come up. But also it's really good for your health, because then you like just get to another level of like, okay, I feel like when you teach something, you really conquer it and you really make it your own. So then you can just step on top. And then you
100%.
just keep on. Yeah.
100%.
Right?
Yeah, it's so but that's the thing. I mean, we were talking in the beginning about those light bulb moments, that aha moment in our students. The person in the class having the aha moment is me. I imagine it for you when you teach, it's you. You know, that
Yeah.
this is a person where it's like, bing, oh, I get that. It's like, well, funny that I'm the person teaching the class, but it's so true. You know, there's this old saying that you don't understand something until you can explain it to somebody else so that they may understand. And I found out when I first started teaching, I didn't know a damn thing. I really didn't. I was kidding myself. I could paint a decent picture, but I couldn't enunciate what the hell the process was. I didn't know. And so it's like, let's have a lesson on composition. Oh yeah, what's that? Let's talk about color theory. I don't know what complementary opposites are. And now suddenly I'm accountable, I'm responsible. I start just absorbing all of this information and just going for it, you know? And it ends up making you so much more. And then it just drives those grooves in your brain, and it builds those neural pathways and makes them stronger and stronger the more you talk about this stuff. I love it now, you know, I'm addicted to it. But I mean, you mentioned something there. Let me just unpack that, you know, about giving the content away. I'm the one receiving. Like, honestly, and anybody listening to that I mean, the what you were talking about there of people kind of hoarding knowledge and hoarding work, not putting themselves out there and not sharing, that perhaps could be the biggest mistake you could make in your career. Because energy, information, especially money, is a flow. And when you're giving, something has to come in to fill that void. Now, that might sound like a bunch of woo-woo, but it's because I put my videos out on YouTube that I landed in the last year 2 of my biggest clients. And in one single sale, in one single purchase, there was more than I had made the previous year combined.
Wow.
And that's because the guy's wife saw a YouTube video.
That's
You don't
awesome.
know where you're going to get it from. So anybody
Yeah.
out there that can teach or wants to teach, throw your stuff up online, throw your stuff on Instagram, put out a YouTube channel. But heck, I hope we have another dozen odd YouTube channels that spring up as a result of this podcast. I hope people understand that they gotta do it.
You know, I have been for probably about a year and a half now talking about I'm going to be starting a vlog. I'm going to start a vlog. And I've slowly, because, you know, you got to keep all the balls in the air that you're juggling. So it's like I want to be like faithful to my present responsibilities, but slowly adding in new things. So I finally have the camera, finally have a halfway decent mic, and I'm like in the final steps of like almost there. So soon to join you, buddy.
Awesome. I'll see you next week. I hope to be watching your video by then. This is what I mean about unreasonable 10x, like massive action here, where like right now, like this is where if I was in the position of like, hey, I'm gonna be so bold and I'm gonna give Kelly Foss some advice here. And anybody else listening, anytime you have something like that where, because I mean, it could be the YouTube video, and it could be the painting that you really want to do or that commission you really want to go for. It doesn't matter. What we tend to do is we set that as a future event and we make it feel all nice and warm and fuzzy. And we look at that future event and go, oh, isn't that nice? One day it's going to be wonderful, without actually taking massive action immediately. I will never leave the sight of setting a goal without doing something towards its attainment. You have to schedule it, you have to plan an action, and then do something immediately towards that goal's attainment. So for me, like I was talking about, people don't know, I was talking about that my YouTube channel for like 3 or 4 years before I launched it. Before I got it in my head that if I don't start now, it's never going to start. So what happened is I started before I was ready. I started before I had the skills of even knowing how to talk to a camera. I still am getting used to it. It's still weird for me. To get 5 minutes of narration out, I'm talking for 45. You know, it's hard. It's hard. But the thing is that you're never going to be ready. Just put it out there, man. Just put it out there. And so, you know, that would be my recommendation for you, for anybody that wants to start something or do something, is start now, start immediately. Heck, you can make this your first video to go up in your channel. Use content for you.
Oh, then you'll copy strike me or something, right?
Heck no. Look, and here's the other thing about copy strikes and the community. Like, the more the merrier. Like, I'm getting in touch with other people who also have YouTube channels, you know, and also are doing this thing. We are a community, and the more the merrier. It's fantastic putting this stuff out there.
Well, it's neat because it's like I get private messages from people all the time asking me some sort of technical question of how is it that you're drawing that, or how do you paint this? And it's great where I can be aware of you and like James Gurney and Scott Waddell and be able to say, hey, check out, and send them links and say, I think they can explain it to you in a good way that you will get it. And I love that, and I look forward to being one of those voices at some point. Perhaps not doing like step-by-steps, but at least my random, like if you read my posts, they're kind of random musings sometimes. So
I think they're wonderful. I think there's some
as
really
you can tell with our
beautiful
conversations where you're like, let me redirect. It's like, I'm like, oh, random musing.
Well, and this is the thing. I mean, people will know by now with this podcast that it might ramble. It's a conversation. You know, these are two artists getting together, having a conversation, and having some fun with it. I mean, I'm not an interviewer, but I just enjoy talking, and wherever the conversation goes, it's fine. We're just talking. It's great. And I think hopefully it's a fun listening experience for people who are just kind of tuning in and like, oh, okay, I want to see where this goes. You never know what's going to come out of that. I think also when you plan and when you direct something too much, you kind of just squeeze and suffocate the life out of something to the point where you end up missing that opportunity or that little spark of spontaneity or something. So it's quite, as much as I am a fan of planning, you know, sometimes you just got to let it flow, man. Let it flow.
Well, anytime I see people online and I'm like, oh, this is an artist I love, and then I realize, oh, they're friends with this other artist I love.
Yeah.
If someone was to say, hey, they're going to go to a bar right now and talk, do you want to join them? I'd be like, yes.
Awesome.
Like, definitely. So this is the sort of like podcast I'd want to be listening to, because it's just like, you know, just shooting the breeze, talking about stuff, talking about stuff that's real to us.
So obviously, you know, I can hear from you that business development, all that sort of stuff is kind of important to learn some new ideas, new philosophies to then inject into your art career. What are some of the things that you're listening to in terms of podcasts, maybe some audiobooks? Could you recommend some titles to people listening?
Okay, well, that book I mentioned, Talent is Overrated. That is great. Let's see. Of course, same as you, Gary Vaynerchuk. I think he is just smart business, which can transcend to all business. Doesn't matter that this is the fine art world. It really is transcending information. I think a good motivator is Mel Robbins. It's kind of like a feel-good motivation. Who else? There's so much. You can just look up on YouTube, like motivating video or something. Yeah. Start your day right, and bam, like there's no excuses. There's so much good information out there to help with small businesses and your art career.
But, you know, it's interesting because there's such a need out there for people to kind of feed their psychology, feed their mind, and kind of get out of the funk. There's a lot of artists out there that are stuck. And I think personally, you know, the best way for me to get unstuck is listen to people who specialize in getting unstuck. Sometimes that is just outright motivation. But I prefer motivation from the people that aren't career motivators. They've made it in another business. They're kicking field goals from, you know, the other side of the field within their own business, their own niche, and then they come into the marketplace and they say, this is how I did it within this business. You know, Gary Vaynerchuk's doing it with online marketing, but he started with his wine business. You know, Grant Cardone is a real estate tycoon. Tony Robbins specialized, you know, he's a great motivator, but he specialized in like psychology, human behavior, and NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. You know, and Tim Ferriss is another guy. You know, Tim Ferriss was fantastic. He had an amazing background based in San Francisco, and put out a great book called The 4-Hour Workweek. By the way, I highly recommend The 4-Hour Workweek, but don't read that book expecting you're only going to be working 4 hours. This is a book on how to make your business a little bit more efficient. And
it's a clickbait title.
Exactly. It's smart marketing, but make time for those things that are most important. Most people want the 4-hour work week because they want to spend the rest of their 50, 60 hours a week painting. We get to do that. So how do you make that work? Now, I want to talk about a couple of technical things, if we could just kind of pivot and go into, like, you know, because I love portraits. I love your process of drawing and painting portraits of figures. Talk to us about how you get that beautiful classical feel in your paintings. Is there a particular technique that you're applying? Could you talk to us about how you do that? How you layer the paint, for instance, what your palette's like? Talk us, just roll through the process of creating one of these magnificent paintings.
Okay, well, the technique that I use, or the method, is the observational method, or some people call it the comparative measurement method. And that is that when I'm working with a live model, I'm looking at them right in front of me, and I am either visually or with my pencil out in front of me or my paintbrush right out in front of me, I'm kind of comparing like the width of their head to the height of their head. And that's like a process that's going in to kind of check to see if what I'm capturing on my paper or my canvas is correct.
Okay.
And I hate using the word correct when it comes to art, because it feels like you're doing a pass or fail test or something. But when you're dealing with realism, anatomy is not to be messed with. Like, bones are bones, and
Anatomy does not lie.
Yes, exactly.
Although you can lie about anatomy, but yeah.
So it's like, I'm going to put a shrub right here.
Yeah, I mean, look, you can cover it up with landscape painting, but yeah, you're right. When you're dealing with direct observation. So once you kind of observe where the planes of the face are and your features are, then you take a photograph of your model, you print that out onto canvas, and you start tracing.
Oh my gosh.
My
soul hurts.
Okay. So from there, what you're doing is then you're sketching that up live on the canvas as you're doing these measurements. And so, what kind of surface are you working on? Is it a primed linen or a canvas? What do you use?
Well, for many years, I was using just Strathmore, I think Series 400 drawing paper, and just drawing the model, and eventually getting to kind of a blueprint stage of seeing where the contour, the outline of the model is looking good, proportions are looking good, the anatomy, there's like little points on the anatomy that I want to make sure that I'm capturing. And at that point, then I would take that drawing and either put charcoal dust on the back of it, or maybe get a copy made of that drawing and put charcoal dust on the back of that, place it on a canvas, trace it, and it's one of those transfers at that point.
Right.
And then going over those dusty charcoal lines with some ink, maybe with a paintbrush or even with just a pure ink pen. And then you have this wonderful blueprint right onto your canvas. And that's a pretty big process in itself. So as time went on, I wanted to focus more on speed, because especially when you're dealing with a live model, especially if it's a client, they don't want to be hanging out for that long. No. So I eventually started just terping out adding a lot of terp to some like burnt umber or raw umber on my palette, and going right on to an oil primed linen that's stretched. And that would absorb it really well, and you have this great, you're doing all the drawing, but now it's with paint. And you're not adding any thickness. So when you're painting, you're doing what they call is fat over lean. So you're keeping the lower levels really cut to be almost a fast drawing by using terps or just painting super thin.
Right.
So I was doing that, and then I realized I enjoy working on board, like oil primed board. There's like an immediacy to it.
Yeah.
So then I started doing that whole drawing with terp and paint on board. And that's kind of like where I've ended up right now. But I'm always evolving. I'm just like checking out something else. And
so in that process, there's no medium as such. You're just using terps and oil paint on board. That's it. No oil, no liquid, no nothing.
No, I leave some what's it called? Oleo gel.
Yeah.
I'll maybe use that on my palette in like final stages. where I'm thinking, you know what, I don't think I hit that blush on her cheek enough.
Okay.
I think it'd be neat to do like a glaze with just a touch of crimson.
Yeah.
Or maybe some cad red, just
Fantastic.
a touch of it in some oleo, and like add a nice little like terminator of like a saturation or something.
Beautiful. So is that Rublev oleo gel, or which one are you using?
What is it? Oh, it's called solvent gel when Gamblin has it. So that's the one that I actually enjoy.
Gamblin. Okay, cool. I've not actually used that. I'm going to have to check it out. Hey, look, we've nearly done an hour. Thank you so much for your time. I'd just like to kind of wrap this thing up. Anything that you think would be interesting as kind of parting advice or wisdom. I want to put a message out there to the young folks who are thinking about going into art as a career. Trying to become a little bit more hopeful, enthusiastic, and optimistic about what the future holds for them. What would you like to leave people with?
To think that you can make art your career. Don't think you have to follow somebody else's path. Make your own path. I think the artists who are really going to be the breakout successes now are going to be the innovators who are doing something that no one's done. So be a trailblazer. Don't think that you have to go the gallery route or you have to paint like that artist you love. Be inspired by these artists, but don't copy them. Find out what makes you and just lean into that. Make you the most you can be. There's different venues of art that we haven't even tapped into. They haven't even been created yet.
Yeah.
So don't think you have to be a giant stoic portrait painting artist hanging in only the top galleries that are in Vegas or London or something.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Do something different.
Kelly, again, thank you so much for your time. Where can people find you online? Give us your website, your Instagram again, maybe your Facebook page.
Okay, my Instagram is Kelly Foss Art, one word. My Facebook is that /Kelly Foss Art. And my website is kellyfoss.com. Yeah.
Okay, and that's
because
Foss.
Kelly Foss Art would just be repetitive.
Fantastic. So that's Foss like a boss, guys. 2 S's.
Foss like a boss, just with an F.
Excellent. Kelly, thank you so much. I actually hope we could do this again sometime. I learned some things, and it's been great talking with you.
Come to New York. We'll get some coffee.
Awesome. Sounds good. I really hope that you've enjoyed this episode of The Creative Endeavour, and a big thank you to Kelly Foss for joining me. If you want to see more of Kelly's work, then simply visit kellyfoss.com. You can also find her on Instagram @KellyFossArt. Now, if you liked this episode, then please make sure you hit that like button for me and leave me a comment down below. If you want to see more episodes of this podcast or some of my painting videos, make sure you subscribe to this channel. As always, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook, but most important, make sure you're subscribed through my website at andrewtischler.com. Thanks so much for stopping by, and I'll see you again soon.